As we commemorate the life and legacy of the late Colonel Xiong, we are most humble and honored to have Governor Scott Walker join us this morning as we do a memorial service to honor his legacy. The passing of the Colonel reminds all of us that it is not what we do for ourselves, but rather how we can serve others with a humble heart. And that is the legacy of our father, the great Colonel Xiong. Governor Walker is a leader like our father. He's passionate and committed to progress, growth, quality of life in the areas of education, health, social services, and economic developments. That's the legacy of our father, and I know that that's the legacy of our Governor Scott Walker. As a mother, an educational leader, I have witnessed firsthand the governor's commitment to education, funding charter schools such as Hmong American Peace Academy in Milwakee here. Governor Walker knows that for the Hmong people, education is our top agenda, not only in Wisconsin, nationwide and international-wise. And that is also the legacy of our father. Governor Walker was voted to office in 2010, and he won his second term in 2014. Due to his outstanding leadership, Governor Walker has made vast contribution, and we know that he will continue to make great contributions to the state of Wisconsin. These also include supporting the Hmong community, such as the Hmong Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce, with many grants for minority businesses and youth programs. And though we are grateful for his leadership. On behalf of the late Colonel Xiong's family, we are humble and greatly appreciate your presence here. Family members, please stand up as we welcome the governor to say a few words. 唐美神主。
Thank you. Please be seated. It is, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. It really is an honor to be here today. And again, my personal condolences to you, to the family, and to really the extended family here today, Colonel Xiong. And we are so honored to be able to join you, to pay tribute not only to the Colonel here in remembrance today, but to pay tribute to his life, both his life of service, in particular from 1959 until 1975, and I'll touch on that in a moment, but then his continued service here in Wisconsin, in the United States, and the impact he's had on so many people here across the state and really around the country. And so it is an honor to be here today. It was interesting, we were talking on the way in about not only family connections, but even some of our prior meetings when I was the county executive, and talking about honoring our veterans from the Hmong and Laos community, just as we do around the state of Wisconsin. Even as recently, in fact, it was interesting, about a week and a half after his passing, on March 29th, we had a ceremony as part of what's now officially Vietnam Veterans Day. You know, November 11th, every year we have the Veterans Day. Last year, in 2017, President Donald Trump signed an act that makes March 29th every year officially Vietnam Veterans Day. 5 years before that, President Barack Obama had done an executive order declaring that, and then President Trump followed up through an act that was passed by a bipartisan group of members in the United States Congress to make the 29th of March every year Vietnam Veterans Day. And as part of our ceremonies that particular day, we specifically focused that the site we were at was at a VFW post in Eau Claire. We moved to different sites around the state, and we had, as part of that ceremony, a representative of our Laos veterans there, understanding that for all that was done, and that's why it's appropriate here to recognize it here today with this special service and remembrance, as you've had for the last several days now, special services, to recognize that when we think of the Vietnam War, there's no way that American troops and American allies could perform without leaders like the Colonel. You think about first in Laos with the work being done at that point through the cooperation with America's Central Intelligence Agency and all the work that was done as a part of that, leading up to that, and then so many lives of American service members that I believe were protected because of people like the Colonel and others under his leadership and others that he served with that worked, really stood side by side with American service members in Vietnam. It's why in the past, when I was the county executive and now again as your governor, it's so incredibly important to us to recognize not only our leaders, but all those who served not only as American service members during the Vietnam War, but all those who partnered and served with us, many of whom long after the technical date that the March 29th alludes to, and that's March 29th, 1973, when the last combat troops and combat support troops left, when the last known prisoner of war at that time was returned to American soil, at least under the official terms. Long after that, there were still those who served with Americans who were really punished in many ways and who were put in harm's way and who continued to risk far after that. And so today, this is not only about remembrance for a life well lived, but also recognition for all those who served under the Colonel and all those who served with him, in recognition yet again, as we say as well, to our Vietnam veterans who themselves were not well received at the time, but who we cannot say enough. Thank you to our veterans and to those who served, who I believe are veterans as well, along with those American service members at the time. We cannot say thank you enough. Now, what's been interesting to me in my time in the county executive's office and now for the last few years as governor is how important it is for that time and that era. And the ceremony we had on the 29th kind of talks about this effort that's been happening across the nation it's kind of a moving ceremony in the sense that it's 50 years that they focused in on, but as we know, 50 years starts way far back and it goes through an extended period of time. You've got from mid to late 50s all the way through the middle of the 1970s is the time in which we had service members and allies and supporters involved. 45 years ago, this year was that actual date on March 29, 1973, but we need to recognize all those who were involved. And so that's part of the presence of being here today, not only to honor the memory of the Colonel and to extend our sympathies to the family and to the community, but also to recognize all those others. But then on a personal level, to say thank you because Colonel didn't just come to the United States and move on. He kept looking out for those who had served, making sure that they were recognized, making sure that they were accounted for. As was mentioned as well, not only from a military history standpoint, but then ensuring that those who came and followed got the support that they needed, whether you were directly in the family or part of the extended family, making sure, as was mentioned as well, that education was a key part of that and continues to be going forward. Just like previous groups, like I think back to, was just looking at Ancestry.com not too long ago about some updates of some extended cousins many generations back, and like many families here, I've got all sorts of different paths that come, but I think in particular of my father, as I mentioned, was a pastor, long since retired. So I say I'm a PK, I'm a preacher's kid. So I won't take an offering or say a prayer or anything like that. But I think back to my father's name is Llewellyn. They used to call him Pastor Lou, but it wasn't for Lewis, it was for Llewellyn, which is a Welsh name. And so my great-great-grandfather, Thomas Llewellyn, came to the United States from south central Wales. He was a blacksmith. So he pounded together steel, was a blacksmith. His father was a miner in a place called Myrtle Tydfil, which is right in the south central part of the country of Wales. And he came not knowing. In fact, he came to America and then went back and brought some folks back and helped some family come back and eventually came to the Midwest. My wife, who Tonette and I are celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, her family came from Italy, in particular Sicily. So we were looking at her history and looking to find some of her relatives along the way and realized that her great-grandfather came from Italy to New York through Ellis Island, worked here for a while and then went back and got the rest of the family. And for whether it was Irish or Italian or Hmong or others out there, there's a similar thread. It's why the motto of the United States is E pluribus unum, out of many one. Out of many one. Not giving up our heritage, but rather embracing that and sharing that and weaving it into the heritage of all those who've come before, knowing we are unique individuals, but we also share a common bond and a common thread in terms of our love for freedom. And that's what you have with the remembrance here of a life well lived. A colonel who was a leader in times of war and conflict, but someone who came to this country, came to this state, came to this community, and was a leader far beyond that, far beyond just his military experience, but continued to lead and look out for the next wave, for the next generation, for those next folks, whether you were part of his family directly or part of the larger family of those coming to this great country. He was going to make sure that the freedoms that so many had fought for in the past, that he shared and loved as well, were freedoms that would be bestowed to all of us and those yet to come to this great country. So today, on one hand, is a time of sorrow and of sympathy, particularly to the immediate family, but also a time to celebrate. Because when we think about freedom, freedom is, I've often said before, is endowed by our Creator, defined by our Constitution, but defended every single day by the men and women who proudly wear the uniform of not only this country, but of those who served with us in wars and conflicts all throughout history. And so today is a day to remember a life well lived, and to probably one of the best ways, I'll just end with this, and then I've got a proclamation that I want to hand off as well on behalf of the entire family, and I'll call you back up. But just to end with this thought. In 1985, I had a chance, I went to a program the American Legion puts on called Boys State in Ripon, Wisconsin, and I was chosen to be one of two young men that went to Washington through a program called Boys Nation. It's a week-long program. There's a boys' state and a girls' state. So high schoolers get picked by their school, and then each state picks two to go to Washington. I went there. It was the first time I'd ever been to our nation's capital. Being a pastor's kid, we didn't have a lot of money, so we usually went about a day's away on a vacation. That was about it. So make sure you take care of your pastors, right? But when I went there, I'd never been to Washington at all, so they took us to the White House and the Capitol, and took us to Arlington and all the sites. But in 1985, one of the spots that was most compelling to me was on the mall, just down from the Lincoln Memorial, in between the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument. And it was a black wall. It only had been up for a couple of years. And of course, you probably know where I'm headed. It was the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall. There's been a replica of that here in this state, in the various communities many times in the past. That particular day, my senior counselor was a guy by the name of Bob Turner, who ended up being, eventually a few years later, the very first national commander of the American Legion who had been a Vietnam veteran. And I saw him go with us. He showed us this wall, as did the other counselors, but I saw in Bob Turner's eyes the tears as he looked and saw some of the names on that wall that he knew. And I've been there many times since. I've seen those families that I know from Wisconsin. I've seen friends, families that I've known throughout the years, and I still go there often when I go to our nation's capital. But one of the things that strikes me about that memorial more than any other, because there's other great memorials, there's other bigger monuments, all of which are special and extraordinary, have a special place in our history. But what I like about that one in particular is it's black marble. And so it's polished every day. And if the sun is out, even on a cold day like today, if the sun is out, one of the things I like best about that particular memorial is as you look at the names that are etched into the stone, if you look closely because of the polished nature of the memorial itself, you can actually see your own reflection in it. You can see yourself looking at the wall. And so I often say, for those names and for those who've served, one of the best ways that we can honor their memories, not just through ceremonies like today, not just through proclamations or memorials, but is to live a little bit of their life, to embrace freedom a little bit better, to respect our neighbor a little bit more, to look out for others, even those who may not always agree with everything we believe, whether it was in politics or religion or business or even sports, to do a little bit more to reach out to our fellow citizen and to embrace them and support them and realize that while we each have unique things that make us different and special, be it our own DNA or our culture or background or family, that here in America all those different things are embraced and supported because of that common bond for freedom. And it's because of great veterans like the Colonel who allowed us to make that possible. It's my honor to be here today and my sympathy to the family. And so, would you come back up? This is, again, I won't read all this because this is similar to what I said in our comments. But in fact, you know what? I'll come over there. I'll come over there and present that. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Joshua Clark. Me, Ocean Day, a couple of vision to pay each of Monsher Clark. You shall not pay your own gun to no much it's a low, a Tasha Clark to Xiong, the Beijing Shark, Silver Cha, the Yabe to former senior pastor, getting it to job paper general day, Xiong, it's a young more general, not a general hopper of Mora, Beijing Shark, no, you take more wrong. Don't more want you to type it, I look on the road, or the channel, a bed, I say,